A young mother is facing murder charges after the mummified body of her baby girl was found dead at a boarding school for troubled teens in eastern Shasta County. A Shasta County woman is in jail, accused of killing her baby. Jessica Nicole Bradford, 23, was arrested at Julian Youth Academy in Whitmore. Shasta County Sheriff's Office received a report of a deceased infant around 5:30 p.m. The baby's body was discovered at the Julian Youth Academy, a Christian camp in Whitmore where Jessica was a staff member. Alexandra Valencia, one of the staff members who lived in a dormitory with Jessica, went into her room to get some extra blankets for Corey and Lucas. Valencia noticed an awful smell as if something had died as she was looking through a bin of blankets. When she grabbed one of the blankets, the body of a baby rolled out. Valencia did not think the body was real, and she called Lucas in from the other room to show her. Lucas also did not think the baby was real. They left the baby where they had found it, knowing Jessica would return to the room soon. The next day Valencia and Lucas went back to Jessica's room to search for the baby, but it was no longer there. Valencia reported what they had seen to her supervisor, Tiffany Morgan. Later that day, Shasta County Sheriff's Deputy Craig Tippings contacted Jessica, who led him to the utility room adjacent to her dormitory. He then found a dead baby under a pink pillow inside a laundry basket. Detectives interviewed Jessica, and she told them that she had been dating her boyfriend, Jovan Castillo, for 3 years. Castillo also worked at the academy. She denied Castillo had known she was pregnant. She said Castillo had asked her why her stomach was getting big, but she told him she did not know, and apparently, she was able to hide her pregnancy by wearing baggy clothes. She did not tell Castillo she was pregnant because she was scared, and she did not tell anyone else because she was afraid she would lose her job. Also, she did not want to disappoint anyone. She had been raised in a Christian home and had been taught not to have sex until she was married. None had been aware that Bradford had been pregnant, including her parents. They were devastated. It's been very hard on them. The joy of being grandparents was taken from them. Jessica then said she gave birth on September 19, 2011, around 1 a.m. on a Monday morning. She gave birth under the deck outside her dorm. She went outside to give birth, because she didn't know if anyone else was in the building. She said she stood up, and the baby dropped out of her, and there was no umbilical cord attached to the baby. And then she didn't hear any breathing or anything. So she hit her back. Not like hard. But was just trying to get her to breathe or something, but nothing happened. So then she just sat there and held her, and then she got in her car and was just holding her in there. After a while, she showered and went back to her car to spend the night with her in the car. When she showered, she pulled the umbilical cord out of herself and flushed it down the toilet. The baby did not move at all after being born. She was not alive. The baby's eyes were open, and she expelled the substance on the blanket. Detective Jackson asked her why she did not call for help when she realized the baby was not breathing. She replied, "I was just scared, I guess. I don't really have an explanation." She then said she was going to bury the baby but decided to keep it in her room under some blankets. The detectives asked her if she had ever helped deliver a baby or been in a hospital where a baby had been born. She said no. In response to questioning, she admitted she had an earlier pregnancy scare with Castillo, but she had not been pregnant. The detectives asked her if Castillo would have been excited to learn she was pregnant. She replied, "I think he would have been bummed because it's both of our jobs and we both moved up here to do this and stuff like that." Later in the interview, she admitted she had given birth to another baby in March of 2010, but it had been stillborn. Contrary to her earlier claim that she did not tell Castillo she was pregnant this time because he had been heartbroken when she lost the first baby, and she did not want to put him through that again. When the detective was concerned the baby had been born alive and had not been honest with him, she admitted the baby had been born alive. She had tried to breastfeed the baby, but nothing would come out. She did not know what to do, but it wasn't intentional to harm her. She had taken the baby to an empty apartment on the campus. She had slept there with the baby, and had checked on her during work. She had tried to get the baby to take regular milk, but she did not have any bottles. When she went to check on the baby on Thursday, the baby had died. No one had heard the baby crying, because the people who lived next to the empty apartment had been out of town. She said the baby had cried infrequently. Anna Mace also worked at the academy. One afternoon she parked next to her truck and heard a young infant crying. The crying seemed to be coming from somewhere in the middle of the truck, but she could not see anything inside the truck or anywhere in the vicinity. Dwayne Smith was also irrigating near the pasture-to apartment early one morning when he heard an infant crying. He walked to the front of the apartment and saw no cars. He got in his truck and drove toward the office to see if anyone knew whether someone was staying in the apartment. On the way, he spoke to Blaze Morgan, who said he did not know that anyone was living in the apartment and was surprised to hear that Smith heard a baby crying. Morgan called over the radio to ask if anyone was staying in the apartment, and a female responded that no one was staying there. Smith went to the staff room to obtain the key to the apartment, but the key was gone. Smith drove to the maintenance shed to retrieve the second set of keys. As he drove to the apartment, he passed Jessica, who was driving in the opposite direction. When Smith got to the apartment, it was empty. Expert testimony also indicated that a newborn baby could live for about 4 days without food or water, but death would be accelerated due to dehydration if the temperature were warm. After an autopsy, the forensic pathologist concluded the baby had been full-term and fully developed when she was born. There were no abnormalities, and everything looked normally developed. The baby did not die from obvious trauma, but the pathologist could not exclude starvation, dehydration, or asphyxia as a cause of death. The doctor who delivered Jessica's first baby testified regarding the details of that birth. He testified that she was ready to deliver when she came to the emergency room with her first baby, and she had a fever. Her water had broken 2 days before. She had an infection in the amniotic fluid around the baby. The doctor testified that the baby would likely have lived if she had come in when her water broke. A social worker who saw Jessica after the first birth also testified. She stated that after the baby died, she was sitting in her room smiling, which had not seemed appropriate. She had acted as if the baby's death was no big deal. She also told the social worker that there would have been a stigma attached to being pregnant, because she and her boyfriend worked at a Christian camp, and they were not supposed to have sexual relations. Dr. Stephen Pine, an obstetrician, testified that he believed Jessica had delivered the baby precipitously, noting that the umbilical cord had been ripped, not cut. He testified that the baby would potentially bleed for several minutes until the cord was clamped down. In such a case, since she had not clamped the cord, the baby could have bled for a while and become severely anemic, which could have led to dehydration and a weakened state. Dr. Pine believed the baby could have had an infection, pneumonia, or some sort of lung aspiration. He opined that when the umbilical cord tore away, it could have caused severe damage to internal organs, and that the baby would not have been able to feed well if it had anemia. Deputies arrested Bradford on Monday for allegedly allowing her 4-day-old daughter to starve to death. As her parents sat discreetly in the back row of the courtroom, a 23-year-old woman accused of murdering her 4-day-old daughter was arraigned in Shasta County Superior Court. It did not appear that Jessica Nicole Bradford made eye contact with her parents, who quickly left the courtroom following her brief appearance. A jury found Jessica Nicole Bradford guilty of the first-degree murder of her newborn baby. The trial court sentenced her to an indeterminate term of 25 years to life in prison. The evidence showed that she delivered her baby in secret, carried it to a remote location where she hid it, and failed to give it any nourishment. The baby died 3 days after it was born. Jessica made 3 related arguments regarding her conviction for first-degree murder, which may have been based on a felony murder theory, with kidnapping as the underlying felony. She used physical force to take and carry away an unresisting child. She moved the child a substantial distance, and moved the child with an illegal intent or for any illegal purpose. Also, the child was under 14 at the time of the movement. The jury was also instructed that a parent entitled to custody rights is liable for kidnapping if she takes the child for an illegal purpose, and in this case, the illegal purpose was to commit murder and to commit child abuse. Jessica argues the felony murder theory was inapplicable, because it does not apply where the underlying offense, kidnapping, is merely incidental to the killing. The prosecution's theory, supported by the evidence, was she kidnapped the infant to keep her from being discovered. At the same time, she neglected her to the point of fatally starving her, because this intent was harbored concurrent and before the actions which led to the infant's death and were not an intent formed only after engaging in the fatal acts. Jessica also makes a related argument regarding the kidnapping instruction. The jury was instructed that the crime of kidnapping required proof that she used physical force to take and carry away an unresisting child, that she moved the child a substantial distance, that she moved the child with an illegal intent or for an illegal purpose, and that the child was under the age of 14. The jury was also instructed that for this case, an illegal purpose or intent was defined as the purpose or intent to commit murder or child abuse. Defendant argues, there was insufficient evidence she caused the baby's death, because the experts could not determine the exact cause of death. The pathologist testified that the body was mummified when he examined it. The baby was full term, and there was no evidence of congenital defects. There were also no signs of injury or obvious trauma. The pathologist could not determine the cause of death and was unable to exclude several causes, including asphyxia, infection, starvation, or dehydration. Defendant's expert opined that she had delivered precipitously, and that the umbilical cord had been torn, which led to bleeding. This would have left the baby in a weakened state. He also opined that the baby probably had pneumonia, or some kind of infection. In point of fact, it does not matter what the exact cause of death was. The baby was alive for 3 days after being born. She was the only person who had any contact with the baby, because she intentionally hid the baby from others. No other person could have caused the death of the baby. The only question is whether she had sufficient intent for first-degree murder. The jury was instructed that it could find first-degree willful, deliberate, and premeditated murder if Jessica either intended to kill the baby or if she intentionally and knowingly committed an act, the natural and probable consequence of which was dangerous to the baby's life. At the time she acted, she knew her act was dangerous to human life, and she deliberately acted with conscious disregard to human life. Whether she starved the baby or failed to get medical attention for it, when it developed an infection or some other life-threatening condition, she either intentionally killed the baby by withholding nutrition, or failed to get medical care for the baby, knowing the natural and probable consequences of that failure were dangerous to the baby's life. Attorneys gave their final pitches to jurors in the Jessica Bradford murder trial, and the case is now in the hands of the jury as they deliberate the future of Bradford. The trial wrapped up 2 weeks earlier than planned and was briefly halted during the middle of closing arguments. Caffale wasted no time in her closing arguments, saying, "This baby never, ever had a chance to live. Bradford has accused of killing wasn't it to her. It was a not child to her. Bradford knew what labor was and was well aware she was pregnant. She took better care of her hamster Mo than her baby, at least the hamster had a name, food, and water, and that the hamster lived next to Bradford's bed, while the mummified baby was in a pile of clothes on the floor. During the baby's short life, Bradford went to Winco, where food and milk were readily available for the baby. But she didn't buy anything for the child. Instead, she drank alcohol and ate cookies. Her duty to help, care for, and rescue her child as a mother. The baby was only named Lily, because Bradford was forced to name her after the autopsy and that she showed no remorse. The jury, at one point, Bradford admitted to investigators she starved the baby. The DA said the fact that Bradford told investigators she was weighing her options indicates premeditated murder. There is no mental defense. Bradford didn't know what to do. She was an adult. In the closing argument, defense attorney Jonathan Jordan argued Bradford should not be found guilty of first-degree murder. Jordan said if Bradford really wanted to kill the baby, all she would have to do is walk 30 feet and dump her in the woods and leave. I can tell you there are enough animals there to take care of it. But she didn't do that, because that's what a murderer does, and she's not a murderer. At the time of the baby's death, Bradford was working at the Julian Youth Academy in Whitmore, which is located in an isolated area. Jordan argued for murder charges. To apply, you have to believe she wanted to kill her baby, but said there's still no direct evidence indicating exactly how the baby died. Jordan said his client tried to breastfeed and give the baby water, but she didn't want to hurt it. The attorney also said the case of Bradford giving birth before and the baby dying is a completely different situation and should not be compared to the case at hand. Jordan questioned the murder charge, saying, "When you murder a baby, do you keep it in your bedroom?" Jordan told the jury, "I don't believe any crime was committed except Jessica, being who she is. She did the best she could." The jury returned a verdict of guilty after deliberating for a day and a half, returned and told the judge they were deadlocked on the issue. The judge ordered the jury to continue deliberations, leading to the unanimous verdict. Shasta County jury found Jessica Bradford guilty of first-degree murder in the death of her baby girl. The story made national headlines when it was brought to light in November 2011. Jessica Nicole Bradford is an inmate currently at the Elmwood Correctional Women's Facility, located in Milpitas, California.